Well, tonight Crafty Sue's taking a break from painting, and we're going to do some jewelry. I haven't done any in a while, and these are anklets that I've been making. They're made with different gemstones and natural stones. What I have found out is your typical anklet it measures between 9 and 11 inches, depending on if you have thick ankles or not. So I have a little bit of each kind. Some of them I put magnets in. This one isn't going to have magnets in it, but this is the August birth month anklet that I'm making right here. And if you know anything about your birthstones, Peridot is for August, but there's also a couple that you may not be familiar with. Now, sardonyx is a beautiful stone. It tends to be a brown to reddish, kind of dark stone. And these little guys right here are sardonyx. See if you can see the colors in those. And peridot is the green stone. And I have those. And that's your traditional birthstone for August. And then the moonstone. And moonstones are really neat. They kind of remind me of an opal in a way. But so I have the three, but there's also a fourth one. I forgot to mention is Spinel. Well, if you don't have access to sardonyx, you can use Spinel. Spinel is just a black stone. It's a very pretty black stone. It can come either, the beads come either faceted, like this little guy, or they can be just a rounded bead, just a round black bead, but it's a stone. The way you tell a natural stone bead from a man-made stone or man-made bead is that when you touch it to your face, it stays cold. It's cold. If you take an acrylic bead, like these man-made acrylic ones, and you put it, they're warm, they're room temperature because they absorb the room temperature, whereas stones stay cool. So the next time you're out buying some custom jewelry and you want to know if it's real stones or not, just put it up to your cheek and feel if it's cold or not. It works every time. So when you're making a bracelet or anklet, even a necklace, you want to start with your center and work your way out from there, even on both sides. Same way with an anklet as I'm doing here. And I'm using a bracelet board, and I just put the extra ones all in the center. If I need to change my design, at least I still have all the same colors. And the elastic that I use for these it's a flat elastic. And I haven't been able to find it in the clear and the flat. And this is anywhere from a 0.5 millimeter to a 0.38 millimeter wide elastic. The reason why you want it thin like that is because you pass through your bracelet or your anklets twice with this elastic. You also will need a fine beading needle. It's very thin. It has the loop for the elastic to go into in the end. You can see there's the elastic inside there. And I usually give myself a good about a 3-inch tail so that it doesn't pull, so it doesn't pull out of the needle. So I started with, since peridot is the original main birthstone that everybody's familiar with, I'm using I think this is 6 millimeter. I know what my 8 millimeters look like. You can use a 6 or 8 millimeter because 4 millimeter is very small. They're like these little spinels that I have in here. This is a 4 millimeter. It's a little tiny thing. So this is about an 8. So that is my center stone. And I've made my design to incorporate all of the birthstones for August for this anklet. And I've added something called a rondelle. It's actually a spacer bead, but it has the green peridot. Look how tiny you can see. You can see the tiny little green crystals inside it. I also have other spinels that are different colors, multiple colors. And there are some that are just black and silver. And then I also have the gold with the white for other pieces of jewelry that I make using those. These spinels are great to put either around a rounded bead or a faceted bead. It just kind of lets it sit nice and tight where you put it. So to get started, and I don't cut the elastic until after I've gone through the beads twice. So with that in mind, now you can, if you're real good, and I don't always trust, because I have this laid out on a piece of fusible interfacing with the glue side up so that the beads don't roll off the table. You can also use the sponge. They have like a rubber foam pad with the beginner beading kits. So you want to remember your middle bead, which will be on an anklet, it's going to be on the top of the foot. Or if you're doing a necklace, it's called a focus bead or focal bead, goes in the center, and you work your design up one side and then up the other side. Same thing on your foot. On the top of the foot, you're going to go around to the back. You always want to end up any elastic bracelet or anklet with a larger size bead, larger bead. So when you do your design, make sure you end up with one of those big 6 or 8 millimeter beads. The reason being is that's where you hide your knot when you finish it. So you start at the end. I just lost my elastic out of my needle. I didn't hold it in there. So put that in there. You want to make sure that you don't let that get loose. And starting from the back side, if this was a necklace, this would be the left side of the necklace. And go through that large, this is the last bead, around to the first bead. So you just go in turn with the design that you come up with. I've taken the rondelles, spacers, and put them on either side of the sardonyx beads. That way you have a bright, sparkly on a round, darker bead. Doesn't that look pretty? It really shows it off. And that's the whole point for when I make my anklets or bracelets. I want to make sure that it just pops. Like you just get a burst of color everywhere you look. Now on either side of my peridot, the large bead, I am putting a spinel bead. And then every other peridot large bead is surrounded by moonstone beads. So we're going to go ahead and get these on here. This usually works up really quick. I've seen people where they just kind of put them on the board and then just put that beading needle through there. I'm not that good at it like that, so I try to put as many on the needle as I can and then slide them down the elastic. Like I said, you have to go through this. There's one section, and I'm just sliding them down. And this is another reason why I use the flat elastic, because it goes through the beads very easily. And it's very forgiving. It's easy to maneuver, much better than the rounded elastic. Now, if you can find a 0.25 or 0.38 elastic for your bracelets, elastic bracelets, or your elastic anklets, then by all means, depending on if it's a good, well-made elastic, you won't have to go through but twice. If your beads will allow you to go through 3 times with something that narrow in width as far as elastic goes, then by all means do so. I've gotten some bracelets that were pre-made and they had this type of elastic inside, and they had 3 rows of the elastic just to give it the strength that it needed. So if you have a beading board like that, or like I have here, you don't have to draw out your design, you know, like writing it out on a piece of paper. You'll just have the visual. One thing that you can do is have each section of the bracelet have a sample in front of you, so that if you accidentally drop a bead, that you'll be able to figure out where you are in your design, and you can go ahead and recreate it. We're about halfway there. I'll show you how this is going to look so that we can get this particular one. I'm doing bracelets, anklets, necklaces for birth months of the year. And the significance in the crystals is a lot of fun facts about what type of crystals you use. Your ultimate healing crystals, as I say, are your quartz and your amethyst, which is actually a purple quartz. The quartz is your healing stone. So if you are wanting to have some healing properties in your jewelry, put some quartz in it. Put some amethyst in it. And quartz comes in all kinds of colors. You have the clear, you have pink, you have the purple, and there's so many other stones that are quartz stones that can give you such a huge variety of a color scheme. And I think the moonstone in this just kind of sets it off. They say that moonstones are for those who have big dreams, and they help with those dreams, whether they come true or not. I don't know if it really does that effect, but that's why they're called a moonstone. The moon is, what is it they always say? It's like, you can go as far as the moon and then some. And sometimes I have a hard time seeing the hole for the beads these days. I'm kind of overdue for a new prescription on glasses, I think. I need to get that taken care of one day. There it is, on the other side. So in each one of these sardonyx, and sardonyx comes in other colors also, but the most popular one is the reddish brown, or golden. Some refer to it as a golden color. It does have kind of like a golden rust orangey kind of hue to it. Now you can go and be extreme and measure 10 inches, 10.5 inches, and then measure, how many beads of 6 millimeter you have, how many 4, and so on and so forth. And then add that all up to come to your 10 or 11 inches or whatever finished size that you're trying for. But I prefer just using the beadboard. And the beadboard is it's got the numbers on it. It's got inches, and then it also has in the centimeters little circles. So where the 2 is would be 20 centimeters. For those of you who prefer to do it more succinctly by metric. Some people prefer metric when they're doing the jewelry. I don't. I know that some places when you go to get your jewelry, it'll say it's 60 millimeters long or 120 millimeters or whatever. But we all go by inches here. So inches just makes it easier. And I'm almost finished putting these on. This is a quick little project. It's really not difficult. You do need to finish off, after you've knotted it off, you need some either E6000 or a type of jewelry elastic glue. Gorilla Glue is another good one. It ranks right up there with the E6000. I lean more towards the E6000 myself, but I'm using Gorilla Glue today just because it's a smaller tube and it's a little more easier to manage for a small knot like on these. So when you get to the end, you want to start You want to end point is a large bead, and so is your other side, because you can slide the knot under either one of the larger beads. You can't really slide them into a small bead, and the whole point of the ending large bead is to anchor your knot. With the glue, it anchors it. And that is not a green one. It's not, there it is. It flinged out of my finger somewhere on here, but didn't go on the floor. But now I have knot going on the very next to the last bead. I can find the hole it goes into. So I have this other, there it is. I would turn on this other bright light, but then you wouldn't be able to see the colors. And so I'm kind of doing it to your advantage. That's so much. Okay, so now I have, there's that one that flipped out on me. So now I have the anklet string. And if I were to measure this, I believe it's like 11 inches. And where's my clear ruler? So I'm going to lay it out just to see. And this is also, if it's too long, where you can shorten it if you need to, by just taking off a section of bead, but make sure that you end up with a large one. And it's going to go there. And here. Okay, you want it cinched up. This says 11 inches. So this would be for a looser fitting anklet instead of being like super tight on around the ankle. So the key to when you're finishing this off is you don't want to lose any beads. And you want to bring it down to where you have about 3 inches of elastic on either end to work with. So what I like to do is I like to tie it off, but not until I do one thing. I've got my 3-inch end here. Now I need to take this elastic and go back through it the second time. This is what gives your anklet the strength it needs. It's a little easier putting on or fishing it through the second time. So what I'm going to do is take and pull out about 9 inches of elastic, because I have to go back through not about 9 inches. So that's about 7 or 9, because when you start tightening it up, that's when this makes up a little more sense. So you just bring around the other end and go back through the beads that you just strung on in reverse order. So once I get the first one in here, it's usually not so bad. And you want to keep your elastic kind of taut, because you don't want to have a lot of extra to cinch up. That's the thing about elastic, is that with it stretching, you don't want to have too much extra, because then it takes forever to cinch up, and sometimes it breaks just because of the nature of it. So I always go through about 1 inch of beads at a time. So I'll go through the first inch, that, and then now that I've got that first part anchored in, I can pull that through the tail that I have, and then go through the rest all the way around. Just feed as many on that needle as you can, because like I said, it's the extra fine beading needle. And go in there. This one I should have turned that other light on. But it goes through just like this. And this end closest to the spool, that's where I started. And I'm going to come back to that point. That's where it gets knotted off. So this should cinch it up pretty good. I didn't quite do 11 inches of elastic at the end. Just be careful that you're grabbing the elastic behind your needle and sliding the beads down, because sometimes the elastic might get stuck. It can get caught and it'll split, and then you're back at square one. We're having to restring the whole thing all over again. You don't want to do that. You can do it with one string of elastic, but that's with a thicker elastic. And what I have found with the thicker elastics is that's really hard to get that knot to stay and to secure under the last big bead. Not always, but when you're doing a combination of sizes of beads, like I'm doing here, I'm doing 6 millimeters and 8 millimeter size. And for that reason, I'm using the flat elastic because it's more forgiving with the different size beads. If you use all the same size beads, shucks, you can use the thicker elastic. But for what I'm doing on this particular design with the multiple size beads for the month of August, I need to use the flat black elastic. Da-da-da. Now when you get to the end, you tie it off just like you would regularly with a square knot. But then there's a little trick you have to do in order to secure that knot. So that's coming through there. And I'm just pulling them back where I've already strung the beads. Because that loose part's going to be all cinched in when I get back to the beginning here. There's one. And go through this one. And also too, because the majority of these beads are dark, using the darker elastic makes it easier for me to see where it's going. And goes in there like that. Like that. There. And that moonbeam or moonstone bead. Don't want to lose the tail end of it. Like that. And how much more do we got? Oh, we just got a little bit to pick up on this other side. Not too many more. And sometimes it looks like it's getting all tangled up in there. Just put the spool through the hole. Now I don't cut it until I've already got that first part tied off, just as a safety feature for myself. If you feel confident that you're not going to lose any of the beads by, cutting it off, cutting a certain length of it, stringing them on twice, then by all means you can do it that way. I prefer to do it this way because I know I'm not going to lose any of them because they're all still connected. So we're going to go like this and pull that through like this, getting to the back side of it. And this is when you can start cinching this up just a little bit, because otherwise I'm going to end up with too much elastic on the end. I don't want to have that. Da-da-da. Okay, so take this little guy. I have to meet this end. So I've got this much more is what I've got left. Pull that through there. And it's kind of like how you cinch up your shoelaces. Basically, very similar. You're just doing it in little sections. Okay, just like this. Like that. And 4 more. So I actually had a little bit extra elastic on here. Didn't mean to. More is better than not enough. Because trying to knot off 2 inches of elastic is no fun. And put that right there. Now all of my beads are on 2 strands of elastic. First pass through and then the second pass. So now I've got this extra part. I have to get this tightened up. So to do that, I'm going to hold on to where this needle is. I'm going to pull this through real careful like. And I'm going to put my finger down on where the needle is. And I'm just going to tighten this up by pulling where it started to where I ended up so that it's nice and snug. It should tighten it up little by little. It's going to slide up. And I'm just kind of wiggling it. I'm not pulling it way too tight. So that it will actually bring this one. Tighten that up. Come on, cooperate today, bub. Because I don't want to break this other string. So I have to slide the beads just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just like this. Okay, now what I'm going to do is take my needle out so that I can get these to tighten back up. Hold the tail end and slowly get them back to go up that side so that it cinches them up. And you'll, in between, you'll see, sometimes you'll see a little loop of that second strand in there. That's where it was loose. So now I'm just tightening it back up. And come on, because I don't want this to slide anymore. I want it to cinch up. I don't know why it's not cinching up for me. I don't know why it's not doing it. It's supposed to get shorter. Okay, so now I've got these guys I can tie off. Now since it's not sliding, I need it to. I don't know why it's not doing it. Probably because I'm using 2 different size beads, and sometimes that happens. You can kind of force the issue by pulling the other side. So I'm pulling the other side and kind of try to get it to shorten itself up. Okay. There it goes. It's slowly doing its thing. There we go. Let's get in there. So you can cinch it up on both sides. I think that's the trick with this one. If you shorten both sides, they tend to shorten up pretty well. Come on, baby. Shorten up, babe. Because you want it to... Why this is not doing what I want it to do. There we go. So now I'm going to tie it off. I'm going to cut my end. I'm just using my wire cutter here. Or flush cutters, whatever. You can use a pair of scissors. I just happen to have those sitting here. And, oops, I didn't cut it all the way. Ha! But I did. And so this is where you make your square knot with both your ends. Now I have this extra loop and I'm using it to my advantage, actually. I'm going to use that as another knot spot. Alright, you're supposed to cut that. There we go. So you're taking your ends and you're making the square knot. Then what you need to do is, because now that only puts a knot in the elastic that's like right there. So now you have to do the layers. So you make a loop. I know this is really hard to show you, but you're going to make a loop with your one end. You're going to make a loop, and then you're going to tie the side that's loose through that loop. So my fingers get in the way. And so what that does is that locks in both strands of the elastic that you've put through your anklet or bracelet. It can be kind of tricky. You do it on the bottom. And of course, now I've totally got myself messed up because, all right, come back here. I'm going to start this over again. Okay, make my square knot because I let it slip out of my fingers. All the way around. You gotta make it as tight as you can so that the beads are right butt up next to each other. Make that square knot. And I'm sorry my fingers are in the way, but I can't really do this with any other way. And then take those same ends and wrap it around the two strands that are coming through the center. Let's see. I can do it with a loose piece because I'm just making sure I don't lose the beads on this particular anklet. There. I've got an extra end here, but that's quite all right. Once you've done it's basically 3 knots. One square knot, a top knot, and then a bottom knot. And I can't, my fingers are just, I have arthritis in this one hand and it's just not cooperating tonight. So let's go like that. I think I cut the one side too short, but the glue will fix that. Okay. I have one little piece here that's like super short. Okay, there. What's that? I don't know where that little end came from, but I'm going to, if I can, do it this way. That longest piece that somehow is like really long, go under and around the back side. All right, listen, you get over here. This is where probably I should have had extra length on that. And shove it through there. Okay. Now, I have an extra piece here. I don't know where it came from. But I know one thing. I'm making an extra knot. Okay. Alright. So this is what I'm going to show you. When you're doing the knot, you have these two strings that came through. What you do with your two ends is you make a square knot around them. So you're basically doing like this. You're doing a square knot. Then with that one, you take this, you make a loop in the opposite end. You take underneath and pull it through that loop. And you do that twice. So you're catching both rows of elastic, top and bottom. And I'm just going to do that with this loose end. This stuff is really likes to wiggle around. And I'm going to do it this on the side. But you want to stay in the middle of those two last beads. That's the key, to keep it between those two last beads. If you don't have issues with arthritis, yeah, it works really well. So that's what I'm attempting to do, is stay there, bub. There we go. There's one. That's where I take this last string and I go behind, holding that loop, come across the front between the two beads and pull that tail up through it. If I can find the tail. Where'd it go? There it is. It's hard to see when you got a black bead and you got black elastic. But aesthetically. Now I'm going to do that on the opposite side. Same thing. Like that. If you don't get through that hole. Now you can also use your beading needle to help do that portion of it, believe it or not. So I'm going to fudge it, sort of, kind of. This one string just is in the way, and I don't know why it wants to do that, but it does. I've got one extra one here that needs to go away. It's this little guy right here. It's really getting on my nerves. Like that way. Okay. Well, maybe I can actually do what I need to do. And okay. So what I'm going to do is take some of my Gorilla Glue for this one. And I'm going to drop it right on that knot. And then I'm going to slide the knot into the bead, the bigger bead. And then I'm going to trim all these little guys off first. These little ends. Because you want those inside the two beads also. Now another method of finishing it off is after you knot it like this, and you have these long tails. Like these guys. And you can feed it, take your beading needle, and where'd I put it? I had it. I just had it here. Took it, there it is. Feed that elastic into it. Like that. And just go back like 3 or 4 beads with it. And then you cut that end off. And that just adds some strength to it. Believe it or not. You can put a drop of glue there if you want. You don't need to. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And I'll take this long piece here. Sometimes it's easier to put the needle in the bead, like that. Oh, get in there. Get in. There we go. Like that. So any elastic ends that you have, and then put it in your needle, and then kind of tuck them into the bead. Just like that. Just like that. So if you end up with an extra tail for some whatever reason, you can just tuck it in there. Once you put the drop of glue on there and you slide the knot into the bead, it's going to be fine. Let's get this one right there. Get in there. I should put it in here first. Then I'm going to put that dab in. And the glue dries clear. I have a couple different types of jewelry glue for these. This is like the Gorilla Glue, Super Glue, and it works great. Dries clear and you don't even know it's there. That little end piece in there and then pull it through. Yeah, there we go. And these little real shorties, just kind of snip them. Sometimes scissors works better. So then I just take a little drop, put it on that knot there, all around it. Close this up. And basically you're going to slide that knot into that one big bead. It may be the one on the right, might be on the left, whichever one it slides into easier, and then just snip off these little ends so they're not sticking out there. I'm going to get my scissors out here in a minute. Clip that one off. And if you pull it a little bit, when you snip it, it just automatically hides back inside that bead. So then it's gone. So and stuff that little guy in there. Sometimes I roll it in my fingers and it goes in easier. Okay, Junior, get your little hanging knot in there. It doesn't want to go in that bead, so let's go with this one. There we go. Oh, that's an extra piece that's sticking out. Come over here. Come here, you. Pull it, and it snaps right in there. So now, this is the August anklet, and I'll let that kind of dry a little bit before it's actually worn. And that's with the August birthstones, a moonstone, sardonyx, spinels, that's the black one, your peridot, and it makes a really pretty anklet, don't you think? No, sorry about the elastic thing, but sometimes it cooperates, sometimes it doesn't. The next one that I'll make it with the clear so you can see the difference. Because the clear is a rounded elastic. Not a great fan of it. I do like the flat. I haven't found a flat white one yet, or clear. Because most of the ones that you find nowadays are the clear. And depending on the thickness of it, it can work really great, or you can hate it. So I think I'm going to try using this one on the next one. This was August. If you want to know what, I'll list the name of the stones for August birthstone month. And then if you'd like to know what September, just drop me a comment, and I'll be more than happy to share with you the birthstones of the months so that you can make your own anklets and bracelets. I hope you've enjoyed this little crafty moment, Crafty Sue making some anklets.